Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining. I'm really excited to be here. I'm also so excited because it's December 9th, and what we're going to talk about today happened 103 years ago on December 9th, exactly. So the chances of what we're going to discuss being exactly today, 103 years ago, is amazing. So I can't wait to talk about that. I'm going to start by sharing my screen. And again, I think it's wonderful to start your mornings learning about Eress Yisrael, having your love for Eress Yisrael grow. And I find, at least for myself, the more I love Israel, the more I love Torah, the more I love God, and that only does wonderful things for your life. So let me share my screen with you. Why am I having trouble? Oh, here we go. Okay. The title of this week's Zoom is A Hanukkah Present and a Christmas Miracle. Hanukkah and Christmas fall out along the same time. And what we're going to talk about today, when it happened in the time, that's how the Jewish people saw what happened as a Hanukkah present, and the Christians saw what happened as a Christmas miracle. So what was it that made everyone so excited? I want to start out by showing you a few pictures, and I want you to just think about what comes to mind when you look at them. So here, this first picture that we're looking at, this is Sha'ar Yafa. This is the street by Sha'ar Yafa. This is picture number one. Now I want you to look at this structure over here. For those of you that don't know exactly what you're looking at, I'll show you a different angle. This is the continuation of the street if we left Sha'ar Yafa. And over here, which is what we saw a minute ago, these are the steps. It leads to this building known as the David Citadel, the hotel named after this. And I want you to look at this picture too. So Sha'ar Yafa is right over here. And then this is the street that we saw leading onto it. Keep all these three places in mind because they're going to be very important by the end of the class. When I look at these pictures, I think of tourists, I think of history, things that I could tell people. But if I sit long enough and contemplate, I think of a moment in history that is so special. And this moment in history, I want to teach you about because I want to give you a new perspective. And I want you, the next time you come to Israel and visit these places, to think about this moment. It was one moment, but when I think of it, it really fills me with light and with joy. And I hope it has the same effect on you. And I want to expand the question and I want to ask, what was the moment in history filled with such humility and respect that made Christians dance and the Jewish people sing? It literally was a moment and it had this effect. And I want to ask, additionally, what moment in history was so special that it warrants an entire Zoom class? My entire class today is going to be about one moment. So without further ado, I want to start by talking about Jerusalem throughout the ages because it'll help us understand why this moment was so special. So I'm going to start it from, we have the Beit HaMikdash. Afterwards, the second one destroyed by the Romans. We have the Romans, the Byzantines who were Christian, the Muslims, the Crusaders, and the Ottoman Empire from 1517 to 1917. Now, what was life like under the Ottoman Empire? And it was 400 years they were ruling, which is an incredibly long amount of time. So I want to go to the end of the Ottoman Empire, 1914, when World War I started. And I want to now throw out some words that people living at the time used to describe it. There was famine, it's war, there's not a lot of food, epidemics, destruction, catastrophe, genocide, drunken soldiers, brawls, robbery, looting. Men were forcibly enlisted into the army. So the last 4 years, the Jews living in the Ottoman Empire, living in Israel, this is what they're experiencing. Their life is terrible. They can't wait for it to end. They want the Ottoman Turks, who are Muslims, to just leave and just stop. Now, what is their response? So I think a lot of them just suffered. But as always, and I didn't plan on even connecting this point to Hannukkah, but on Hanukah, we know that the Hashmonaim, the Maccabim, they fought against the Yavanim. And there's always the group of Jews that say, we're not going to take this. We want to fight against them. So how did some of the Jews respond? There was this group called Nili, which stands for Netzach Yisrael Lo Yishaked, which was for an underground organization formed in 1915. And its goal was to assist the British by passing on information. So we have World War I going on, and the Jews living in Israel, they hope that the British are going to now take over from the Ottomans. So they say, how could we help? Let's pass information on. And for those of you that were here last week, this is a picture of the Neely Museum in Zichron Yaakov, which we mentioned. An amazing, amazing place to go visit if you want to learn more about this. So one response of the Jews was to fight against it. And we described a slide earlier how hard it was for the Jews. So you could imagine what their feelings would be when finally the rule of the Ottoman Empire ends. And now we're getting to the moment that I spoke about, and we're going to get into it deeply. On December 9th, 1917, which is exactly today, something miraculous happened. It was 2 weeks before Christmas and the first day of Hannukiah, which is really almost exactly the same on the Hebrew date, because tomorrow's night is the first night of Hannukiah. What happened on that date? So after the Zoom, you could go to people in your family and give them a quiz if they know what happened 1917, December 9th. So what happened? The British Imperial Army entered Jerusalem. And this was the first time in Jerusalem's history, and a few slides ago, we went over all the different empires, that Jerusalem wasn't conquered, it wasn't looted, it wasn't robbed, it was treated with reverence and respect. And that alone is just unbelievable, because when people conquer, they conquer and destroy, and now we're in charge. But they didn't conquer Jerusalem. They walked into Jerusalem, and how did they walk in? So I want to first read a quote from the Times of London, which is a newspaper from 1917. In none of her previous 17 captures has Jerusalem escaped absolutely unscathed, and it is to the glory of the British arms that this most venerated place on earth should come through the ordeal of battle, unharmed by the disturbance of even a particle of its ancient dust. And we see in this the respect that they have towards Jerusalem. And here is the even more amazing part, and we're going to discuss in a few minutes why this fact is so incredible. General Edmund Allenby, who was the head of the army, he entered on foot. We see him on foot as an ordinary, simple man. Now, that's not usual that when an army is now taking over, they're going to just simply walk in calmly, quietly. And a quote from that time period, not a trumpet was sounded as the English army entered the holy city. Think about this. They just captured Jerusalem. They're entering quietly. No parade, just walking quietly to avoid desecrating the sanctity of the divine presence.
Not there, on the table. Yeah.
Hold on, let me just mute everyone. Okay. This is from the Palestine News. Now, it was noisy because you see people in the balconies that's sitting and cheering, but as far as the British were concerned, they were going to walk in quietly. Now, I want you to understand how big of a deal this was. And to do that, we're going to go back to some of the pictures I showed you in the beginning. This is the Jaffa Gate, or Sha'ar Yafa. This is a really nice picture of it at night. And you go through the gate, and if you walk straight, you hit a wall, so you have to turn. And that was done for defense purposes because everyone always wants to conquer Jerusalem. And these walls were built by the Ottomans. And if you're trying to conquer a city and you're running full force, if you have to turn, you have to slow down. And it gives an advantage for the people inside. So this is Jaffa Gate. And this over here is if we would walk in and then turn. And I want you to notice something which is really, really odd. And I don't know if you ever thought about it. This is a hole in the middle of the wall. Now, we don't really think of it today because the cars drive up it, and it just seems very natural. The cars need a place, so you drive up. But if the walls are built for defense, why would there be this huge gaping hole? Because, okay, the people, fine, they're going to be stopped because they can't go full on through the gate, but let them just go over here because here's an opening. So I want to ask you, why is there a break in the wall? Now, when the Ottomans built it, there wasn't a break in the wall. But why is there one today? And this connects to what was so amazing about General Allenby entering on foot. Now, according to what is told, so how great it could be for defense that there's a hole. So in 1998, the leader of Germany, his name was Kaiser Wilhelm II, he decided he was going to come into Jerusalem, and he wanted to enter through the gate, except according to the story that's told, his chariot was too big to fit through the gate. And so they decided that the Ottomans agreed they were going to help, they were going to clear a part of the wall to allow him to enter. So the reason why, now I can't say that this is 100,000% true because there's really no way of knowing, but all of from my courses and other guides, this is what I learned. I Googled this recently, why is there a break in the wall? And I found a very, very interesting article, which dismisses this theory that I'm proposing. They said, yeah, right, why would they do that just for a Kaiser? So I don't know. I can't say it's 100% true, but I am going to put it out there because it might be true. And it also connects really nicely to the whole theme of the class. And it could be true. Maybe it's true. So let's assume that it is true. They made a break in the wall because he wants to be able to go through on his horseback. Now let's compare that a minute to, and here's the break, to General Allenby. Kaiser Wilhelm of Germany, he orders a breach in the wall so he can enter triumphantly. And General Allenby enters on foot. The contrast is so glaring to make a hole so you could come in with your carriage and proudly. And the British say, no, we're not even going to enter on horseback. We're going to enter on foot and quietly and solemnly. The humility of Allenby to do that, it just blows my mind how so respectful. Really, I think it's so special. And here's the picture. We see General Allenby over here. He's entering on foot. And he continues on the road up until here. And he's standing on the steps by the Citadel Tower. And he's reading out a proclamation. Now, the proclamation he reads out is in 7 different languages, which also I hear that and I say, how respectful. Because he's not a conqueror coming saying, we speak English, everyone better understand English or else. He says, who are the people that live here? What languages do they speak? How can we help them understand us best? Let's meet their needs. They don't have to meet us. And let's read in 7 different languages. And I'm going to share with you some of the things that he said, which is just so beautiful. It's just so beautiful. And here are the steps that I showed you earlier. General Allenby was standing right over here. Here's from a different angle. This is him over here. And he writes, I'm going to show a few quotes, and I crack up that these quotes are from a letter to his mother. I entered Jerusalem on foot on the steps of the citadel. A proclamation was read out in many languages to the assembled multitude. And here is a proclamation from December 1917, and it's his proclamation of martial law in Jerusalem. And what it is he told the people that we're not going to come and take over the synagogues and take over the churches and the mosques. Everyone, we're going to treat everything with respect, and we want you guys to guard it. And we're not going to sit and overturn everything just because we're here, which is, leaders don't really do that. You come to a new place, you conquer, you set the law. And here he's saying, we want to respect what you already have in place. The British took upon themselves value trust, declaring that they would respect the city's past and its traditions. And I want to share now 2 other interesting facts. So, trivia question, if anybody recognizes what this is. I typed Google into Jerusalem stone, and this is one of the pictures that came up. A lot of people know that there's a law in Jerusalem that when you build a building, the stone on the outside needs to be Jerusalem stone because they want everything to match. This, if you go back to ask when it was proposed, how old is this law? This is actually from the time of the British, because the British, they like order and they like beauty, and they said part of respecting Jerusalem is we want to respect the building and have everything to be nice and neat. So this, the stone wall matching is actually because of the British. They put that in place. And I will answer the trivia question. Let's see if someone answered in the chat. Is it a hotel? Yeah, it is a hotel. So I'm not going to say it. You got it, Moe. So this is the Inbal. This is the Inbal Hotel, Jerusalem stone. And I also, on the right of the screen, I have olive trees. Another one of the laws that the British put in place, they said, we don't want anyone cutting olive trees. We want to respect the sanctity of the trees. And it's just so against the history of how Jerusalem was dealt with. We saw all the armies, the Crusaders were not respectful to the olive trees, neither where it was the Ottoman Empire. And here we have the British thinking of how could we be as respectful as possible to the current traditions. And over here is a public notice. original from the time. And first of all, notice how it's in 4 different languages, because again, they said, we want to meet the needs of the people, not the opposite way. And I'll read over here. The first day of October 1918, a further notice was issued forbidding the cutting down of oak or carob trees. And it's the respect is, here's another example of the respect. Another fun fact, if you know, here's the old city, and I want you guys to notice what color you see around it. You see a lot of green, and in Hebrew is known as Tabat HaYeruka, the green ring. And the reason why there's so much green around the old city, so here I outlined it for you, it even extends a little bit further, is because also the British, they said, we want to respect the sanctity of the old city walls. We don't want anyone building right outside. Let's leave it green. Let's leave gardens. And that's all because of the British that they did that. And if you think about it, right outside the old city walls, there's no houses, there's no building on it. There's a little bit of space before the next building. And that also dates back to the time of the British and to this time period when they are coming in. Now, here's a really, really fun story. How did Jerusalem surrender and to whom? So I'm going to tell you there's a lot of myths and legends and some facts and other things not sure about regarding this. So I want to share all of it with you. When the Ottomans realized they were going to lose, they said, let's surrender. So the Turkish ruler, he went to the mayor of Jerusalem at the time, Hussein al-Husseini, and he said, go surrender to the British. So what did he do? He wasn't sure how to surrender, so he asked, how do I surrender? And he was told, usually you surrender with a white flag. So he took a hotel sheet, ripped it into 2. You see it over here. He took a broomstick, stuck it on, and he found some soldiers of the British Army and surrendered to them. So that's one version of the story. I want to show you another version, which I love. So the comic, you read it the opposite way because it's a Hebrew comic. So you have here the British soldier telling 2 cooks that he wants eggs for breakfast. Now the cooks are walking, they're thinking where they're going to find the eggs for breakfast. Here we have Hussein al-Husseini, who has to go surrender to the British, and he's sitting and picturing these tough British soldiers. And who does he end up surrendering to? He surrenders to the cooks, because he doesn't really know what the British look like, and he sees 2 British men and he surrenders them. And according to this version, it was the 2 British men that are responsible for the surrender of the city. If this is the true version, you can imagine how perplexed they were. And you see on the bottom where the British cooks really looking for eggs for breakfast. So this is a nice story that's told that it's possible that when they surrendered to 2 British cooks. Now, Allenby was compared to Yehuda HaMaccabi. And I want to share another quote from the time period. I think it's so amazing how it's today. The Jewish neighborhoods are lit up tonight, the first candle of Hannukiah, dancing joyfully in every window. This time, they say the English were the Hashmonaim, and General Sir Allenby was Judah the Maccabee. And that's how excited the people were. If I take a minute and really try to put myself into their shoes, they're living under the Ottomans. Life is very hard. We saw earlier, there's no food and they're poor and people are robbing. And then all of a sudden, like the way they saw Yehuda Maccabi, you have this respectful man walking in on foot. The people aren't looting and burning and killing. They're saying, we want to respect your traditions. We don't want to cut your trees down. We want to say things in your language. And that is how people looked up to Allenby. And today in Israel, there's streets named after him. There's statues of him. He's really, really revered here. And for the Christians, he was a crusader. And here's a poem from 1919. Crusaders greater than of old, your work is not in vain. The holy land that you have saved shall evermore remain. The sacred land, the cherished land, the name of Allenby shall be as chosen by God to set the city free. And the Christians also were excited, which also I think is a really nice point, that you have something, a lot of times people, religion is something that divides people. And now everyone in their own religion is able to see the British coming and be happy by it and be excited by it. And it's something unifying, which I also think is really nice. This over here is a Sefer Torah. Now, it's mini, it looks a little bit big in the picture. And this was given to Allenby as a present, because how did the rabbis of the time deal with him? They were thrilled. They were so excited and they wanted to give him something. And now I'm going to share a quote from a letter to his mother. He writes about the event. Speeches were made by Dr. Chaim Weitzman and the chief rabbi, and was presented with the Torah. Torah is a manuscript of the law of Moses. It is a double roll in Hebrew, enclosed in a cylindrical silver and jeweled casket, a beautiful and valuable piece of work. And he's writing to his mother, so write to your moms. And he's so appreciative of it, and you see how he's describing it. And the rabbi said, how could we show our appreciation to Allenby? Let's give him a mini Sefer Torah, and that is what they did. Here, this I also think is really nice. What they did, one of the things they did afterwards when the British came is they took shell cases, and you see they made it into a Hannukiah, which perfectly connects to the time period. And a beautiful, beautiful pasuk really connected to this. It says in, hold on. It says in Yeshayahu, Perek Bet Pasuk Dalid, V'chitetu charbotam le'itim, that one day the nations are going to take all of their swords and weapons, and itim is a shovel to do work. They're going to take all their weapons and they're going to use it for productive things and for measures of peace. And here they're taking shell cases from bullets and they make it into Hannukiah, which spreads light. And we see in this small example, we see part of the Nebuah coming true. And in Israel, so from then, and especially more even today, we really, really see Nebuah coming true. It's great, especially to know the Nebuah of Yeshayahu and Yirmiyahu, because those are the ones that we can see coming true today. Also, another thing, I didn't include it here, but I just want to point it out. They, which is just, it's so beautiful. Another way they wanted to kind of encapsulate this special moment and special time is they had this project where they would take flowers of the Holy Land and they would press them into these books, and then they would send it off to people. And what a message to share from Israel, because flowers is something that people love, and to get flowers of Eress Yisrael, so to feel like you get a part of it and to get something pretty. And I really love those thoughts when the thought is, how could we share the beauty of Eress Yisrael with people? It's just an incredible way to get people excited about Israel and love Israel. And from back then, that's what they said, let's do this project, Flowers of the Holy Land. And that was another thing that they did. So I want to summarize what we have so far, and then we have a little bit more. So we said we're going to title this Zoom a Hanukkah present and a Christmas miracle, because the Jews saw it as a present and the Christians said, what a miracle, the Ottoman rule is over. And why are they so excited by the British? The British are Christians. So, and the British respected the Bible. So they're really happy that they're coming in now. And then I showed you a bunch of pictures because I said there's a moment in history that happened December 9th, 1917. And it is really, really special. It was only a moment, but if you're aware of it, you can sit and think of, and contemplate all these ideas that it brings up. Then we spoke about life under the Ottomans, and it was really, really hard. And that is one of the reasons why the Jewish people welcomed the British so much. And we spoke about how Allenby entered on foot. As a matter of principle, he's entering on foot, as opposed to Kaiser Wilhelm, who there's a break in the wall because he has to enter on carriage. And it's just, you see the humility versus the pride of Britain versus Kaiser Wilhelm. Then we said that the British capture of Jerusalem is the first time that the city is not captured and looted and robbed and people being killed. They're being so respectful. Then we discussed the story of how did Jerusalem surrender. Was it by the British cooks? Was it from members of the army? And I will say just something about dates. So December 7th to 9th, December 9th, Jerusalem was captured. And then 2 days later on the 11th was the official ceremony by Allenby. So the ceremony that you see is taking place on December 11th. And we mentioned the respect that the British have, whether it's building everything through Jerusalem stone, maintaining green around the old city, the not cutting down the olive trees, the carob trees. The Jews looked at Allenby as Yehuda HaMaccabi, and the Christians looked at him as a crusader. And then we looked at the mini Sefer Torah that Allenby was given as a gift. And now I want to go back to the pictures that we saw earlier. We saw the street, Sha'ar Yafa, we saw the steps of the citadel, and we saw this break in the wall. And I'm sure a bunch of things came to mind when you saw it. And now this is the moment that I hope could come to mind as well, because I think it's just special to think about how much respect they had. And here is a continuation of that moment. You could pass by the steps. And this, I think knowing this also shows how the more history you know, the richer your life is and the more meaningful it is. Because picture the average person walking by these steps, glances at it, maybe doesn't, has no idea that this historic event happened. As opposed to you, now that you're aware of it, passing by, looking at the steps, you can, in a minute, contemplate Allenby standing there proudly, reading the proclamation in 7 languages. Think about what it meant to the people of the time to be treated with such respect, what it meant to the British themselves to be treated with respect. And that can make all the difference. Taking those few minutes and thinking of this moment in history, it could change the tone of your day, because when you connect to the past and the lessons of it, I think it's something really special. And this was the question we asked earlier. We said, what was the moment in history filled with such humility and respect that made Christians dance and the Jewish people sing? And now we can answer the question. And the moment was the British respect for Jerusalem's past and traditions. That's what made people so excited. And now I want to take it a step further, and I want to ask, this is what I ask myself when I get from this whole beautiful moment. Where in my life do I show reverence and respect for tradition? That's what the British did. They looked to the past. They said, Jerusalem has a history. How could we respect it? So in my own life, am I respectful to the past traditions or even people? And I think Hannukiah is a wonderful time to contemplate this message, to ask ourselves about our respect for tradition. Even every year, I ask myself about how I like the Hannukiah, because there were years where I didn't like the Hannukiah, and then I run and go back to my computer and doing what I'm doing. And then there's other years where I say, wait a minute, let me take a minute and think about the miracle. How could I spend now time learning something connected to Hanukkah, singing songs connected, and it makes all the difference. And it's a tradition, dating, such a strong tradition and so much to discuss, and it just adds so much meaning to your life from respecting traditions of the past. And we see from the British, even if it wasn't their tradition, if it's something other people do, that alone deserves respect. So that is the question I want to leave you off with. Thank you very much for joining. If anybody has any questions, I will be happy to answer. Otherwise, have a wonderful day. And enjoy December 9th, Historical Day in History.
I've walked
Thank you.
the stairs so many times to see the light show over there. And now I'm really going to understand what happened there. Great cheer. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you for joining.
Great lecture.
Oh, thank you. I'm so happy to see you. Good evening to you.
See you too. Okay, next time I go to Shariaf, I'll definitely look at everything with a new light.
I'm so glad you joined. Thank you.
That was great. Thanks.
Thank you for joining. I loved sharing it. How crazy that it's December 9th.
It's crazy. It's crazy. With Hanukkah starting tomorrow night.
When I was planning it, I'm like, oh my gosh, the dates work out perfectly.
Unbelievable. It was a great topic. Thank you as always.
You're welcome. Enjoy. Have a great rest of the day.
Thanks.
You know, your story about the Germans, Kaiser Wilhelm, having that done so he could go through on his carriage, I could definitely see that because they are so arrogant, the Germans. So I could see that he would just not have it all knocked down so he could get through in his splendor and in his carriage.
The contrast is just amazing. It's just unbelievable.
Beautiful, beautiful share. Thank you very much.
Thank you for joining. Have a wonderful day.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.